So for anyone joining online, we'll be starting about 2 minutes there. Okay, so welcome everybody in the room and online. So this morning we're just going to talk about Canvas for new staff. So any questions you have, Norma in the room or anyone online, if you're online, if you could use the Q&A feature, I'd appreciate it, and we can kind of deal with the questions. We'll take a few pauses through the session anyway, and we'll go through those. Welcome, first of all, any new staff to MTU. I might just go through a couple of things in terms of that welcome. I suppose there's a lot of different systems that you have to get your head around, I suppose, when you come here first. Canvas is obviously our primary e-learning platform here in the university and across the university. So our Kerry colleagues have just rolled out Canvas as well, and Zoom. So a lot of the training here be relevant to our Kerry colleagues also. This is just by way of showing you who we are. So there's a couple of us here in the room here. Dara, unfortunately, is missing on the online version there, but we'll take another photograph and we'll remedy that. But we're a team of 12. We're based here in the Department of Technology and Enhanced Learning in the Melbourne building. So if you're ever looking for us, just come to the seminar room in the Melbourne building. That's who we are. So if you're just wondering who you're dealing with in terms of any ticket inquiries and anything really to do with e-learning across the university. So we manage all the e-learning systems, but we also do a lot of course development, and it's just not all systems based. We also do support for any of those platforms, and we obviously do staff and student training as well. So I kind of mentioned the services there. This is just by way of illustrating the type of stuff that we do. So we're not just all about, well, in the main, we're about the mainstream activity happening here, so supporting those systems, but also we do a lot of exploratory research. And the exploratory research is what informs what we do and helps us to improve those internal supports and services. So a lot of the research we do is either European research or national research, and that would be e-learning focused typically. And so we hope that we bring in any of those learnings that we have from those projects into those internal supports and services, and that's just a little bit on that. Hybrid learning. So right now in this room, we're delivering a hybrid session. So that means we're delivering to a face-to-face audience and an online audience simultaneously. So some of the sessions that we're doing this week and last week are hybrid, and I think we'll be doing a lot more of this going forward as well. It's a nice way of providing equity to online and face-to-face audiences and giving those people a chance to connect as well. So the session outlined today or this morning is we're just going to talk about the ecosystem. That's all the different kind of services, the applications that kind of feed each other to provide a digital learning infrastructure here in MTU. We'll talk about logging in and accessing your modules, first steps in Canvas, the interface, setting up your module, uploading files and adding links, and assignments in Canvas. And we might mention a couple of other things in between as well. Just to start with the Canvas bit. So Canvas is really the central platform that glues all of the other stuff together. So Canvas is a virtual learning environment. It's used to, first and foremost, you'll see your modules. Your modules come in from a system called Banner. And Banner is the system that manages all enrollments into modules. So any student and staff enrollment, so a lecture being on a module, a student being on a module, all those enrollments are managed in Banner. And Banner updates twice daily. I think it's kind of midday and it's at kind of 3 a.m. So any queries that come in around Banner should go to the Web for Faculty team, because that's kind of the central source of knowledge really for enrollments. So if you don't see your module in Canvas, if you're not enrolled in a module on Canvas, if your students aren't enrolled, a lot of this stuff is in flux this time of year, you see. So you might have, your first years are obviously later this year. If there's students that are late registrations, or there's other things like electives and so on, all of that stuff really is managed in Banner, which is the central source there. And obviously Canvas as a learning management system or a virtual learning environment is a place where you do all of your hosting of your learning content, your learning materials, you communicate and collaborate with your students, you host and manage your assignments, and you manage the grading of those assignments as well and the feedback. So they're kind of the headline items in Canvas. That's kind of simplifying it, but there's a lot of other stuff you can do in there as well. Just Canvas by way of a virtual learning environment. It's we have it here now some years. I couldn't tell you how many years at this stage, 5+ anyway, easily. It's really easy to use. It's an intuitive user interface. There's a mobile aspect to it, which I'll mention in a minute. You have learning analytics. I'll talk about that in a minute as well. You can record media into Canvas, so you can record audio and video into Canvas. You can also use a speed grader, and there's support there as well, tier 1 support. Now, our department has also integrated a lot of other tools into Canvas. At the start of the emergency remote teaching period, we would have rolled out Zoom, and Zoom, obviously because of that period, was a very heavily used application for live classes. So Zoom and Canvas have just gone through a national tender, meaning they both have come through that tender and have been successful, and we've procured them now for the foreseeable future. So those two kind of tools are really the bedrock of our e-learning offering here in MTU. Zoom is the live online lecturing tool. We'll be doing a bit on that later on if anyone's interested in their recordings as well from previous sessions that were done for new staff and new features and so on. There's an anti-plagiarism tool or plagiarism detection tool called Original that's also integrated into Canvas. There's an e-learning authoring tool called H5P. You have different integrations happening in different pockets of the university as well. So you have a tool called Numbers, which is a maths, stats sort of an integration. You have a Labster, a lab-based integration, which allows you to kind of host experiments and stuff like that. So that's used in the sciences. Learning analytics are kind of integral to Canvas. So you're able to kind of look at engagement with your module, and you can actually join a lot of the dots. So if you're using Zoom, you can view attendance. You can use Quickly for attendance, which is the last bit there. You can look at participation. So participations are measured based on when students log in, how they interact, and especially when they submit assessments and stuff like that. So you can kind of get a good sense for engagement with your module. But typically that will really only start to provide, I suppose, its fruits really when it comes to week 6 or so. You'll get data as you go along, but obviously we're in week 1 now, and there won't be a lot of data yet to be able to kind of see how your students are doing. Obviously, you'll see a lot of it in your classroom anyway, in face-to-face interactions, but it is useful just to be able to kind of have a pulse of what's happening in your modules. There are 2 mobile applications also available. So you have the Canvas Teacher app and you have the Canvas Student app. Because Canvas originally came from the US, some of their lingo, some of their vocabulary is quite American. So you have teacher student rather than lecture student, for example. They also deal with a K-12 audience over there as well. But just in case you're wondering, that's why it's teacher and student. They're useful, particularly for students. That student app is useful just for communication. So if you're late for a class, for example, or if there was a change in schedule, you as a teacher or a lecturer can send out an announcement from the app and almost send it as a broadcast. Students will get that then on their dashboard. They'll get it in their mobile app as well. I think this is very useful just to illustrate the kind of all of the other stuff that's happening here within the e-learning infrastructure. So you have Canvas at the center here with the mobile app. You have all of that stuff that you do in Canvas. So, the assignment side of things, the communication, collaboration, you have hosting, sharing information, sharing content. And there's this thing called the Canvas Commons, where you can share content with other Canvas users. So within the university or actually wider afield. You can also look at things like the scheduler, the calendar. These things are really useful. Then on the outlier bit here, you have the integrated tools. So we have a digital badging platform, your plagiarism detection. We have an e-portfolio system also there. And then Zoom down here covers a lot of the live communication classes, whiteboards, annotation and stuff like that. Down here, you have peripherals that people might use, webcams, headsets, etc., and document cameras, graphics tablets. And then a lot of the stuff around content. OERs are a big interest of ours, for example. You have Screencast-O-Matic for developing screencasts and so on. So I suppose that's a good way of just illustrating what's happening in terms of the overall e-learning infrastructure and how that links in. With Canvas, I suppose I mentioned at the start, Canvas and Zoom are really the 2 primary tools. You could say the headliner tools, and they're quite integrated as well. So you can launch, you can schedule and launch Zoom sessions from Canvas. All your students can access those, authenticate into those seamlessly. Recordings are available to students also through that integration. So only students within the university can access those recordings. They can't share them outside of the university. A lot of thought has gone into permissions for students and staff so that each get the most relevant for that particular role. So obviously students can do certain things in Zoom, but they can't do all things. Whereas a lecturer can obviously they can schedule a Zoom session, they can record a Zoom session, they can, they have a lot more permission than a student would have for the right reasons, obviously. And then there's a lot of stuff that students can do within Zoom. So students can have student-to-student Zoom sessions, they can run breakout groups and stuff like that. So we found, even though we're back to a lot of class-based face-to-face interaction, there's a lot of stuff that you can actually still use Zoom for. You can, run online group sessions, especially if space is at a premium in classrooms. You can record stuff in Zoom yourself as kind of asynchronous learning material and present that to students through Canvas. So a lot there within the Zoom Canvas sort of integration that can help you in your day-to-day. I mentioned Canvas Teacher. I mentioned also the banner, the banner integration. So banner feeds Canvas, all the enrollments come from there. And if you have any queries, just email Web for Faculty, Cork at NTU, or if you have any queries, really just get on to us if you have any queries at this point as well. edtech@ntu.ie is our email address, and I'll put that up there in a minute. I'll just take a quick sip of water there. So just we have a question from Norma here on how to communicate with your students from the mobile app. Yes. Well, you can do it from Canvas as well. So you can just send an announcement from Canvas, or you can, if you're on the go, you can send it from your teacher app. Students don't need to have the app to receive that message. They'll actually see it through Canvas if they log in on Canvas, but it's really useful if they do have the app because they'll get it on the go, you know. They can set up notifications. They can, there's quite a lot of control they have over customizing what they're notified about in Canvas. So they can be as under or over notified as they want to be in there. And I can go through that there in a minute as well. Looks like my machine is going to restart without letting me intervene. So 2 minutes. Okay, I might just, sorry for everybody online there, but I might have to actually restart my machine. It's enforcing a software update. We might actually switch over there in a second. Yeah. So just bear with me a sec. I don't know, Dara, would we be able to just run the video of this? Yeah, plug in the Huddly into that maybe. Sure. Yeah. Okay, so just bear with me 2 or 3 minutes, folks, and I'll just get this up and running again. Okay, I'm just going to continue because I think that's a longer countdown than I thought. I thought it was about 2 minutes, but it looks like 2 hours. So I'll continue. We won't be 2 hours in the session anyway. So sorry about that, online audience. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the Q&A. Okay, so logging into Canvas. So you can log in at https://cit.instructure.com using your that actually should be your email address rather than staff ID, sorry, so I'll just update that. I think this was based on a student one. So it should be your email address and your password. That's it. Yeah, so your staff email, which is currently actually cit.ie. I know we're all moving towards MTU credentials, but there's a lot of systems within the university that haven't gone through this merger yet. So it's kind of like WorkVivo and other things. We're still essentially using CIT credentials for a lot of the systems still, and that merger is kind of is an ongoing project. So that will happen eventually when that stuff will catch up. But for now, you can log in using your cit.ie email address and password, the same that you use for logging into others. So that will authenticate in via IDP. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pop out of this and I'm going to open up my dashboard. So we've logged into Canvas at this stage, okay? And this is your dashboard. So the first thing you'll see is your dashboard. This is the modules that you have published. typically, if you're new staff, you're probably going to see a lot of stuff that's unpublished down here. And I have a lot of modules here, some that I'm lecturing on myself. I suppose one thing to note is don't get too overwhelmed by this initially, because you're just going to see all the modules that are coming from Banner for semester 1, semester 2, and semester 3. It's a very quick exercise to tidy up this dashboard, literally by going into your all modules section and just selecting what you want to be available. So right now we could actually start to plan for the semester 1, and we're going to go into modules. I'm going to go into all modules. So scroll down here. You might have quite a long list in here, so you just scroll down to all modules. And you're going to get something like this. You're going to have a long list of modules, and you're going to see you're enrolled as a student or a teacher. Again, that teacher terminology, it's lecture basically. And you can see a column for nickname, term, enrolled as, and published. So all modules by default are unpublished. So that's one thing to get your head around with using Canvas initially. And I suppose that allows you to start to plan, put up your materials. And when you're happy with it, you can publish it out and it's available to your students. So students will see kind of something similar. If you have modules that are published, they'll see that they're enrolled, but they're not published yet. Now I'm going to go to something that I have in the current semester. So term here is your term column, is your semester. We can see we have 2021, 22. I'm going to scroll right down to 22, 23. So I have something in semester 1. So I'm going to go for e-learning authoring here. So you see this star here in the left? This is actually how you determine what's on your dashboard. So unstarred items are not on your dashboard. Starred items are on. So if you just click on the star, that will actually start to clean up your dashboard right away. So if you have a big list of unstarred items and you star one, only one module will be on your dashboard. So I'm just gonna, that's fine. I'm gonna go into my e-learning authoring module here. And I have a module in there as is. I'm just gonna delete this for a second. So once we've kind of done that cleaning up and we have our modules in our dashboard, we can actually start to go in and use the modules. The module interface is quite simple. The overall interface, I might just go through in a second here. So you have a global navigation here. So that's basically to access your calendar, your inbox, and other things like help. And once you go into a module, you get this module level menu. So your global menu and your module menu. And your module menu then is where you just basically do everything within that module. If you're ever confused, you'll see where you are here. You'll see the title of the module. So you'll see the program code and the CRN up here, and you'll see the module name. And this is the URL as well up here. And you can just go back at any stage to your dashboard like that. Or you can go back into your modules to manage your modules in here. So that's basically where you do all your managing of what you can see and so on. I'm just going to go back into that module a second. So I have e-learning authoring here for, oh, so that's the semester. It's the last delivery now. I'm just going to go to this one here. This is unpublished still, of course. So that's your module menu. In here, you have home, Zoom, units, etc. So I'll just go through those, and I'll just go through the general interface here. So this is your main navigation. You'll see there's eye icons beside these here. So that means they're hidden at the moment. Typically, if they're hidden, it means either there's not content in them, or you actually have them hidden from the navigation completely. Home will always be this page here where you have a combination of recent announcements, and your kind of basically this is your where you kind of put all your learning materials in here in what's known as units. So on the right hand side then, so you have kind of your menu here, you have your stage area, and then you have kind of your module menu here for allowing you to publish and to do other things like choosing homepage or just changing some of the module level settings in there. So the first thing typically I would do is I'd actually start setting up units. And units are basically like folders, or just like containers. And typically what we recommend staff to do is to set up units for each week of the delivery of the modules. So typically you might have 12 or 13 of those to go at the 12 or 13 weeks that you're lecturing. Obviously, when you go on later in your module, you mightn't be doing a lot of serving up of learning materials in week 12, for example. A lot of assessments will be happening later on. So it depends on yourself. You might have 10 of those weeks, and then you might have something kind of generic to cover assignments or revision material and so on. So typically what you'll do is you'll go into your unit, and then you'll actually start to just put in the name. So week 1. And you just do the same as you go along here. Week 2, and so on. And then basically they're containers for your learning material. Now, some lecturers might prefer to do it topic-based rather than week-based, which is fine as well. So you might be delivering a topic over weeks 1 to 3, and you're not happy with just kind of saying week 1, week 2, week 3. You might have a topic that covers those 3 weeks, and that's fine as well. Whatever you're comfortable with, really. It's just a matter of making it more straightforward from an instructional design point of view for your students to be able to navigate through the material, and that you sequence it somewhat straightforward. Now, there's a very important thing to note in Canvas, and it's called publishing. So publishing is basically when you publish something out, your students will see it. If it's unpublished, they won't see it. Now, at any stage, if you're wondering what students can and cannot see, you can go to what's called the student view. So up on the top right here, there's a student view button, and this gives you basically a preview of what your students will get in the module. So right now they can't see anything because we haven't published any units. We haven't actually added any learning materials. So right now they just see no units defined, they see no recent announcements, and they just see the menu here, which is based on what we have populated or what we have made available in the navigation. I'll show you that in a minute. Now down here, you can reset the student view, or you can leave the student view. So just in case, sometimes you might be actually going into the student view and you're trying to do stuff like put your material up, and you can't because you're actually in what's called like a student, you're in a student account basically. It's a student test account that's set up. So you need to leave that view first. Okay, so we're back into our kind of a staging area in here. So the quickest thing to do, I think, is just to start publishing out your units first. So they're available, depending on what you want available. Obviously, if you have stuff weeks 2, 3, 4, and you don't want it available, all you need to do is just click that unpublish button there. Now, there are other options for kind of scheduling when that information is published out as well, if you want to get very advanced. For now, I'm just going to keep it kind of, just straightforward and just go through the basics. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to add material, typically into the unit. So this might be slides that you deliver in any 1 week. It might be supplementary material, it might be reading material. It might be an assignment as well. It might be a formative assignment rather than a summative assignment. And typically that's the type of stuff you're going to put into these units or these weeks. So I'm going to go and I'm going to drop, I can add a file. So if you choose files, I'm just going to go into my documents and just see, actually what I'll do, very quickly, just bear with me, and I'll just download this as a PowerPoint. And that'll be available then in my downloads. I'm just going to stop the share here a second and share my desktop so you can all see it. Okay, and go back in here. What I'm going to do then, so that obviously you're going to start managing your files somewhere on your desktop or on OneDrive. And once you have those prepared, you can actually start to add them. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to go to my downloads, and I have Canvas for new staff, which is the slide deck for today. I'm going to open that, and that will actually get added in there. So that's the PowerPoint. So I suppose typically when we're lecturing, a lot of people will be using PowerPoint slides or something else, but it will be slide based typically. Maybe they're using PDFs as well. It's all the same principle. Basically, you can upload it, the students can review it as revision material or just kind of glance through what you did in that session, and that's where they'll see it in there. I'll show you how that looks from a student point of view in a second. Now, you know the publishing buttons I was talking about. So you have a publish button for the unit, but you also have publish buttons underneath for each of the items. So again, if you just wanted to hold that off for the moment, you could go unpublish. You could also schedule it. So that's what I was mentioning in terms of being able to schedule availability. So you could actually say that's available from a particular point in time. So that's only if you want to kind of drip feed your content. Typically, I think most people will just put up the material under each of the units. So that's that. What other material would you want to put into a unit, I wonder? You know, maybe documents and so on. You can add assignments. So these are all the other things you can add. So you can add an assignment. So you create an assignment in the assignments area. You can create quizzes and add them into your unit. Files, so any type of file really, PDF, docx, all of the other typical files. If you're in something discipline specific, you might have something, a file type that's very specific to you, and that's where you do it. You just add file. A page is where you can basically add text and other materials into what's called one page, and it allows you to kind of write around your content and to link your content. I can show you that in a minute. You have discussions, so discussion forums basically for threaded discussion. So they're useful to talk about a topic outside of class, for example. You can set up graded discussions as well if you want to. Text headers are literally just a way of organizing the content in subsections under your unit. So if I was to go for a text header, I could just say slides. And basically, it's just kind of a way of organizing the content visually. So you have that kind of hierarchy. You have your unit, you have your slides. We could add another text header for reading material under there, and we can just kind of, it just makes things visually more coherent in there. Again, just make sure when you're looking at it that you have your publish icons clicked here. That's just makes sure that they can see them. And so if we want to just have a really quick look at what that looks like from a student's point of view, if we go to the student view, we can see exactly how that looks. So obviously it looks cleaner. They don't see all of the stuff to do with publishing and all of that in there, but they do see the week one, they see the slides, and we can click into this and see what it looks like. Canvas does embed the PowerPoints into the interface. So once that loads, it'll actually show the PowerPoint file up. So there it goes. So it kind of just renders it out for Canvas. So students can kind of go through it there. They can go full screen and they can kind of go through the slides like that. So that's useful from a student's point of view. They can go back to home and then they'll see all the learning materials there. So really, you know, this is your staging environment. This is where you post your learning materials, whether they're slides, whether it's links to other materials. So I'll just show you that there as well. So if we go into our week one, and let's say we're just going to go and add a URL this time, an external URL. So this is an external link. An external link could be a link to anything online, basically, so long as the audience has access to it. So it could be a link to a website, it could be a link to a video, it could be a link to a file, as long as they have access to it. So that's probably one of the very used options that you'll use as well. So if I was to go in and we'll just say, okay, we're gonna just do a bit on why study at NTU here. Just copy that. We want them to review that. So that has a video and has all that stuff in there. I'm just going to copy that. Paste that URL in there. I'm going to say you have the option to load in a new tab. That really depends on what content you're linking to, but that's probably best practice for a lot of stuff, because that'll just break it out into a new tab that they can view. They can close that and they'll be back into Canvas again. It depends on yourself, really. So if I add that item, again, if I publish it, if I go up here to my student view, I can see we have a URL there and it's going to link out to a new tab in there. Close that down and I'm back then to my main material here. Make sure to get back out of the leave the student view there as well, so that you can kind of get back again. Is there anything else you want to see in terms of posting learning material in Canvas? Are they the main ones? Anyone online as well?
I just have one question. Are we making an assumption here that all students have received training on how to use Canvas and are familiar with it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So question in the room, are we assuming that students have got training for Canvas? So it's a very good question. So students that are current students certainly have got a lot of training in Canvas. So we'd have done training in each semester last year. For any first years, which are quite late this year, we'll have a stand over on main campus and we'll be doing training here as well and online. We'll be doing refresher training for students, but it's just a little soon for students this week. I think we're probably looking into next week. So that's a good question. There's a lot of material online for students as well. To be fair, I think in terms of Canvas, it's super intuitive for them. And we haven't had a lot of queries from students, but if they do, there is tier 1 support. So we have that facility there in the help menu. A lot of stuff there in terms of just kind of either self-guided support, or if they want to submit a ticket, they can submit a ticket to tier 1. I didn't mention tier 1, actually. Tier 1 is a service provided by Canvas. So Canvas provide a support service that's available over email, phone, and web chat for staff and students. So if like yourself, if you wanted to get onto them, you could do that, or you can get onto us as well, obviously. But web chat is a really useful way to get a really quick response from an agent. So hopefully we have a lot of supports, but yeah, we'll definitely be rolling out training for students as well, refresher, and for new students as well. So tier 1, that menu, you're obviously probably seeing a bit more in there because I'm logged in as an administrator, but you can use that to submit. Typically, I'd say either phone them or use the web chat. The phone number is a free phone number, and that's worth tapping into. So that's kind of the units area and putting up material. The other thing we might do, obviously, is we might set up an assessment or assignment. So if we go into the assignments area, this is where all our assignments can be. So I guess you have 2 different types of assignments. Obviously, you have formative, which are not marked, graded as part of the overall module, and you have summative, which are graded. Now, both can be set up in here, and you can actually set up weightings for them so that Canvas will actually calculate out the grades based on the weighting. So if you had a 20% assessment and you had an 80%, and you set up the weightings accordingly, you'll get that reflected in your gradebook, which is quite useful. But just to go to setting up a basic assignment, you just go to assignment. Your assignment name goes in there. Your assignment detail goes in here, so your description. So typically what I do is I put in something that means something in here about the assignment name. I would then maybe put a bit of effort into what I put in here to do with maybe it's kind of like an excerpt or a summary of the brief. Now you can link to the brief as well, which I typically do anyway. So, all of us would probably work through our briefs and we'll kind of roll them over from year to year and we'll update them. A brief is useful for a student, I think, as a download. So typically either a Word document or a PDF, and that would have all of the pertinent information then as well in terms of your deadline, any of the requirements and so on, and just a kind of more detail on the assignment. So what I do is I probably put in just a little summary of what the assignment is in here. You can, of course, you can write your whole brief in here as well, but I think really it's probably better to link out to that as a file. So that's where you'd upload a document, and that document will become a link then within in here. So let's just see if I can maybe illustrate that here. files. For illustrative purposes, I'm just linking to this file here, which is a PowerPoint, but it could be a PDF or anything like that. I'll submit that. And that actually puts a link to that file in there. So imagine this was a PDF brief. That would actually be in there, and I could actually just talk to the assignment then. So, you know, assignment summary, additional. So like this is called your kind of rich text editor, and this is typically where you kind of do the same stuff that you do in Word. You have your formatting options, bold, italic, underline, etc. But you can add things like you can add tables, you can add other media, you can add images and links. So this is kind of very similar to what you'd see in a page, basically, and it just allows you to write around your content, and it actually allows you to link out to other materials. So, for example, if you were setting an assignment in week 3 and you had some relevant learning material that was kind of put up in week 1 or 2, you could actually just link to that in here. So you're kind of making it all very relevant. You're not re-uploading material, you're just kind of linking to what you have in the module. So if I go, for example, to highlight any of these pieces of text, and I go to link them, if I go to hyperlink, I can link to an external link, or I can actually link to stuff that's already within the module. So that'll be a course link. And course links can basically allow you to link to any other material that's already in the module. So we don't have a lot in there, but we do have units, for example. So you could say, you know, review unit 1, where you have learning material. So let's do that. It's in week 1, and they can link out to that, review it, and you can kind of go back and forth. So you can link across to all the stuff within your module, and that makes it nice and intuitive from the student's point of view, and you don't have to re-upload material as well. You can also link to things in your module navigation as well if you wish. So that's kind of hyperlinking within a module. It's uploading material. Just to understand the rich content editor as well in here. So you can do your usual stuff here. You can kind of say assignment summary is H2, for example. H1 is already reserved for the Canvas stuff up here. And you can kind of just, like this, the units, you can kind of give some sense of hierarchy and sequencing to your content just visually by using the stuff that you'd see in Word, for example, H2s, H3s, H4s, hyperlinks, and so on. You can highlight text and do all of that kind of usual thing, the usual stuff. You can add images as well into that. You can add media. So if I was to record media, I can record video directly into one of these as well, or audio. So if I was to upload record media, you can go record, and you can see that is actually picking up my voice there, and I can record an audio bit. Because my webcam is being used here in the session, it's not picking it up, but if your webcam was connected, you'd be able to record a video message into that as well. So there's a lot in there to be able to add context to your assignment, and just give a bit more information. And as we all know, it's great to give them as much information about the assignment as possible in terms of the brief. Do a special session on the assignment, just make sure that they know exactly what the criteria are. Maybe even refer to a rubric, an assessment rubric as well, which you can post on Canvas, and so on. You can add YouTube videos. So if you went to the YouTube button there, you can actually search for a YouTube video and embed that. But you can also add your own videos. So rather than recording directly into Canvas, you can upload media as well, and that's where you do it in their user media. There are other integrations available through the rich content editor, like H5P, which is probably beyond the scope of this particular session, but it just allows you to add e-learning interactions into your pages. So that allows you to kind of do drag and drop exercises and things like that. But probably safer to kind of leave that until outside of this session, where we do dedicated sessions on that particular tool. And if there's any other integrations, they would be available here through this plug icon. Currently, there aren't really for this area. Now, if I go down here, we just see the other things to do with assignments. So we have the points value. So this determines what portion of the marks it gets. So usually I kind of just keep this at 100. Just go for now 100 points and display grade as percentage. And you can work out your weightings afterwards then if you want to. That basically just dictates how many of the overall marks it will get. You have the submission type. So there are all sorts of submission types available. You have text entry, which just allows the student to type into a text box. But I think typically you're going to have students uploading files. So that could be any type of file, but you can also restrict the file type. So if you want to be very prescriptive about the type of file that they're going to upload, for example, our colleagues in architecture might be dealing with CAD files. You could kind of say .cad or whatever the file format is there, and the same in other disciplines. So you could do that. Just be careful with it, just in case you do have variations of file types. I tend to keep it open, and I just kind of put the information in the brief regarding the file type, for example. You have other things in here, website URL. So if they were submitting their assessment content as an external URL. So again, you just have to be very careful that that URL is accessible to you. I've had situations as an assessor of students submitting material from an external source and not having permission to view it. And that becomes a real problem, particularly if you're looking at the second assessment, typically for your module, and the student is gone, the student has left the building, and you're trying to access material, you can't. So again, all of that stuff you kind of just articulate within your brief. So if it's a website URL, I think you can combine website URLs with the file upload. So they might upload a document and they might have the URL and access information in there potentially. All depending on your situation, really. It depends on what you're going to do. They can upload media recordings as well. So if you want them to submit a video reflection, they could do that straight through Canvas, or an audio reflection. They can also annotate materials, so they could annotate material they already have within Canvas. This is important in terms of attempts, so allowed attempts unlimited. So I would typically leave it at unlimited, because a student may have connection issues, or they may have they might have made an error while they were uploading that particular assessment in that particular point in time. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're submitting it way later than the deadline. And even if they do, it's going to be marked as late in the gradebook. So the student, I would leave that as unlimited typically, but if you want to limit it, you can say number of attempts 1 or 2, for example. This is where you can kind of point to our plagiarism detection tool, or a plagiarism review tool, which is original. I think that's part of another session that we'll do shortly, I guess, Daria. And then we have things like group assignments. So you can actually set up a group assignment, which allows you to, for a group assignment, you have to actually have set up groups in a separate area in Canvas. But it does allow you to create an assignment where the group submits an assignment, and that's graded for that particular group. You have peer review assignments as well, so you can manually assign peers or automatically assign peers. You can do kind of blind, you can do an anonymous peer review as well. There are very detailed guides on all of this stuff and getting into the specifics of it in our help center, and I'll show you that in a minute. You can assign it to different groups or individuals as well. So typically you're going to assign it to everybody, but in a situation where you might have a student with special accommodations, for example, that needs to take it at a different time, or to have special a special environment within which to do the assignment, you can actually kind of basically outline that person in here, and they'll get that. You have the due date. So that's the date, and you have the time. You have available from and until. So I typically leave available from and until alone, unless you want to get very detailed about when it's available and when it's not available for a student. But again, when it comes to assignments, when you have unlimited submissions, it's going to be marked as late in the gradebook. I wouldn't be overly strict about when it was available and when it was not available. But you can control all of that stuff in there. So that's assignments. So if I was to just save that one, I haven't a lot of information in there. I might just put in a due date in there, and I'll just save and publish that. Just go. I'm just going to untick that there, and I'm going to, well, what you could do is you could just save it as well. So if you wanted to save it as a work in progress, that wouldn't publish it out. So one thing to note is if you do save and publish, your students will actually get a notification of the assignment being available. It'll put it on their to-do list, and it'll give their, they have a lot of different ways of actually seeing what they have coming up and deadlines and things. So we might just save that for the moment as a work in progress. And that will mean it's not published out to the students yet. And what we can do as well then is let's go into week 2. We could actually add that assignment into week 2 and just leave it unpublished there for now. So when we're ready, we can kind of go in and publish it. So that's the kind of they're the main kind of areas to be kind of concerned with within Canvas. There's an analytics area. The analytics area will show up a message like this initially, and that's what I was talking about at the start of the session. You're not typically going to see data until your students start interacting with the module and you start interacting with the module. So I would say typically maybe week 3 onwards, you're going to see some meaningful data in there in terms of participations and so on, and students logging into Canvas. But I guess you just use the information judiciously. It's useful as a kind of a pulse of the module just to see what's happening. You can also do useful things in analytics, and we'll be covering this in a few weeks, where you can message students who haven't submitted or maybe haven't logged into Canvas in a while. There's a few useful actions in there you can do. So nothing will show up here. Even after 24 hours, I haven't actually done anything in this module, so there won't really be any information that's any way meaningful for now. These areas are hidden by default, and there's reasons for that. So you have files. Your files area is hidden because we don't want all files, especially files that are attached to assignments, being available by default to students. People area is not visible to students, but it is visible to you. Obviously for data protection reasons, so you don't want students being able to see each other's student numbers and stuff like that, so that's hidden. But you can, as a lecturer, obviously you need to be able to see that information. Pages, we kind of saw an example of a page interface within the assignments tool, so it's very similar. You can just create pages, maybe just for additional direction within a module. Outcomes, we don't use at M2, so you don't have to be concerned with that. We don't have like a link from Banner Learning Outcomes or the from the, I forget the system that manages the learning, your structure for your modules, learning outcomes, descriptors, and so on. A carry something. Yeah, so that's not connected in with Canvas. Rubrics allow you to create assessment rubrics, so you could actually create an assessment rubric and attach that to an assignment, and that's a very useful tool to be able to grade your assignment, provide some meaningful feedback there, and then in addition to that, record maybe an audio feedback message or written feedback as well. We'll be doing more on rubrics as well in time. So rubrics, new analytics, there's a few things we'll be covering there in a couple of weeks. And then we have collaborations. I don't tend to use that much, but you can set up collaborations using Google Docs, but we don't really use this, to be honest. So that's why it's hidden. Students do have access to Google Docs because they're in the Google they're using Google services for their student email and Google Drive and so on, but that will change. Everything will move to Microsoft for staff and students. So there will be a version of this for Microsoft when it does come on board. Then finally, you have your settings. So your settings allow you to kind of look at just some of the important information to do with your module. So you can, for example, this is a very important value in here. It's called your SIS ID. So this is the unique identifier for your module. So if you're ever communicating with Web for Faculty or with the TEL team here, it's useful to have your SIS ID. And that's really useful when it comes to doing cross lists where you merge different modules together to have the same overall group doing a module. You can also go in down here, you can actually do something quite useful if you have an elective. So there's, I'll untick it here. So what you can do is you can set up a module to self-enroll. So I was mentioning at the start that Banner brings all of the enrollment information into Canvas, and that's how students are enrolled and staff are enrolled. In a situation where you might have electives, so an elective will typically have an evaluation period for a student. So a student might want to just audit a module for a week or two. They don't need to be coming in through Banner. They just want to be able to audit temporarily. What you can do is you can set up a self-enroll link. That's generated by Canvas, and you can copy that link and you can send it to them. And that will allow them to temporarily enroll, but that they're not actually coming from Banner in that instance. You're just manually enrolling them, and then they can be removed again if needed. So that's good for electives. If you wanted to add a description for your module, you could put it in there, but to be honest, you're going to be doing a lot of that through the other parts of Canvas. One important area that I didn't mention is announcements. So announcements are a really useful way, and we were kind of talking about this earlier when you're kind of broadcasting out messages to the whole group. You can use a Canvas teacher app to do it, or you can use this area within Canvas to do it. You can basically, and this interface is very similar across these different areas. So you see this is very similar to the assignments area as well. So you have your topic title or your announcement title and your message. So let's just say class is rescheduled for today, now 11 a.m. And then you can kind of elaborate on that. So you could do that, and there's a lot of things. You might have timetable clashes. You might be caught in traffic. It could be anything. And what you can do then is you can actually save that, and that'll actually go out to the students, all students enrolled in that module. The other useful thing about announcements is you can actually delay posting announcements. So this allows you to actually schedule announcements for different parts of the semester. So if you've delivered a module previously and you have a very good idea of when you want to send a message to your students regarding an upcoming assignment, something they have to do, you can actually delay the posting. So this allows you to be able to go say, right, I can post this on Tuesday the 20th at 10 a.m. Save that, and that'll actually just get queued up and scheduled as an announcement. So very useful. It's like a productivity hack in a way. You're able to kind of plan out all your communications for your module for the semester, and they'll actually get posted automatically then to the students. Now there's a few things in here allowing users to comment, so they can actually comment on it like they would on a social feed. Enable podcast feed, don't really use it. Allowing students to like is another kind of almost like a social feature there. So that's good. Actually, what I'll do is I'll edit that and I'll just post it right away and not delay posting, and show you how that looks when we go to our home menu. So I'm going to go to the student view, and what this shows us now is like a typical kind of a snapshot of what the module will look like. So we have an announcement that's actually come in here. I can see that I haven't read it because it has the red icon there or the red dot. So in here, you'll see the last two announcements, and then you see all the learning materials. So it really is like a good kind of a bird's eye view of what's happening in your module. You have your main menu items here. You have that announcements area. You have the learning material in here, and then you have, I was mentioning the to-do. So from a student's point of view, anything that has a time stamp or a time attribute with it. So it could be an assignment, it could be a calendar event, it could be a communication. All of those things will actually come in the to-do list until they actually click in and they view that material. Syllabus is a very useful area for students as well, and the syllabus is time-based as well. So the syllabus is basically a dynamic area where anything time-based, like assignments, will actually show up in the module summary. So if you set up a number of assessments, they'll see them in the module summary. If you set up anything through the calendar, this is the calendar now from a student's point of view, they'll see that assignment is there in the calendar. From a student's or from a staff point of view, the calendar is useful for kind of doing things like setting up schedule appointments. So you can kind of set up almost like a doodle poll within Canvas. You can do that in here by clicking on the date, going to appointment group and setting that up. You can also kind of set up events and assignments through here as well. So, you know, there might be a situation where you want to just set the dates for your assignments, but not actually kind of flesh out the detail. You could do that in there. So all the time-based stuff is in there. And then from a student's point of view, they'll see all of that stuff in their to-do. Now the inbox is an area, and I won't show the inbox because I might have some student back and forth on this, but your inbox is basically like a webmail inbox for yourself. Within Canvas, it combines all of the communications you might have from individual students within Canvas. So students can message you in Canvas, it'll show up in your inbox. You can reply to them from within Canvas, and it keeps everything associated with the module that communication originated. So that's really useful. So if students asking questions, I would encourage them to do so through Canvas and not to be emailing you directly, because then everything gets logged. It gets logged in that inbox. Your history kind of just shows you the things you've done within your module or within Canvas. The Commons is an area for sharing out to the masses, and then your help menu is basically for any help on how to access Tier 1. Finally, one thing just to show you in your modules that I didn't really mention is Zoom. So if you're delivering live sessions on Zoom, it's available in the Zoom menu item here, and Zoom is integrated directly into Canvas. So it means that when you do launch this up, it'll launch the Zoom integration, and you can actually schedule Zoom sessions directly within Canvas. Zoom is a different session altogether, and we are doing a Canvas Zoom refresher later on if you're interested in seeing how this actually works. But suffice to say, you actually get your cloud recordings all posted automatically in here. You get really useful things like reports, so your attendance reports for those live sessions. And so if you start to join all these things together, like Zoom and all the different bits in Canvas, like your new analytics, your communications and so on, you get a very kind of a nice suite of options to kind of run your day-to-day modules basically, and assignments and communications and so on. So I think that's it. We're up to 2 minutes past 11. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone in the room? Anyone online? Okay, so we have a question in the room about the SIS ID. So the SIS ID can be accessed in your settings. So whatever module you choose, you can click on settings. And if you scroll down, so you have module name, you have module code, but your SIS ID is the unique identifier for your module. And this is how all of the information comes in from Banner. It associates that particular ID. So this is the ID that I would quote in any support tickets that you put in if you want to ask for a cross list, if you want to ask for anything in particular to be done with that module. I would just quote that. So you can copy that SIS ID from Canvas and just paste it into a ticket then. Actually, one thing I might show you there as well is just those supports and how to access them. So if you go to tel.cit.ie and you go, sorry, this is being, so if you go to support here, there's support for lecturers and students. Now, there's a lot of stuff in here, but if you're going to your staff help articles here, this is a help docs area, a knowledge base where we're constantly updating this. So this will show you. So if you're looking for something to do with Zoom, for example, Zoom. You know, there's a smart search box there. So if you're looking for something, there's probably an article for most things in here, to be fair, at this stage. So that's the first place, but you can actually submit a request as well up here. And that will allow you to, sorry, I'll just get rid of this. That will allow you to submit a ticket directly to us here, or you can actually email us as well. And I'll just bring up the URL here. So you have edtech@mtu.ie is our email address, and that basically queues it up as a ticket, and we'll all be able to deal with that as a team there. So the 12 people you saw there at the start will be monitoring that and back and forth. Yeah.
I have another question.
Yeah, sure.
You know, when you said that the students can message you on
So the question was, do you need to be logged in to Canvas to view student communications to you via the inbox? So no, you actually get notifications to your email as well. Now, one thing that's worth doing in Canvas, and I just show you here, is if you go into your account settings, you have a notifications area here, and this allows you to customize all the notifications that you get in your, basically in Canvas, but also to your email address. So I just have it set up here for Shane Cronin at CIT. But if you want to, you can actually add your MTU email address in there. But I think everything will just go to your MTU address by default anyway. It'll get rerouted, you know, from CIT to MTU. So basically you'll get a copy to your email, and you'll get a copy into your inbox in Canvas. And Canvas is basically where you'll be able to filter it out by module as well.
and just the second part of
So the question is around module activity and using new analytics. So there's a few ways actually of communicating with students based on their interactions in Canvas. So new analytics, once the analytics get generated and that data gets generated, allows you to message people based on a few conditions. So you can message them based on activity, or lack of activity, or you can message them based on not submitting, for example, or being late in a submission. You can also do that through the Gradebook in Canvas. So the Gradebook is where you actually see all your submissions, and there's columns in there where you can actually go message students who haven't submitted or have got a grade less than or more than a particular value. So I think there'll definitely be bits of training on that stuff as well as we go along, because I think it's hard for staff to do anything when there's no data there currently. But a lot of stuff again in the guides, in our help guides on that, just on virtually anything in there. And tier 1, I would just encourage you to use that as well, because you know you get someone on the phone or on web chat to interact with. Anything else there online or in here in the real world? No online.
No, we're cross-section.
Okay. I might just wrap up there because we have something to run to there, but thanks very much to everybody in the room and everybody who came online. We did have a number of people online there as well. So we have another session today at 2 p.m. on Canvas and Zoom Refresher. So there'll be a bit of an elaboration on a lot of the stuff I went through there. So have a good day, everybody. Thank you.